I just vaguely remember that when they tore it down.
My only knowledge is the little bit I've heard through working at the museum, and if I understand correctly, when when Southern Pacific decided to take it down, it had been vacant for a long time. Because it was interesting, because when I was in high school and shortly thereafter, the family that lived in the station, their son was in my class at school, so I always associated it as the Monroe's house and all. But then when Southern Pacific shut down the depot basically to use, they moved away. And it was my understanding, but you'd have to verify that at one point they did offer it to either the city or I guess the city, but it was before we knew about preserving things. That was my understanding, was that it came before that era of, oh, we need to save that. You know what I mean?
Historical landmarks.
Yeah, and which happened in a lot of areas. Because we always use, like when we talk to people at the museum, we always explain, like, to show the example, Goleta was very forward thinking.
And that's Goleta's new one.
They saved it, they redid it and all, and same with Fillmore. But Carpinteria was so small, and it was like, okay, what are we going to do with the train station, you know? But now, of course, and very shortly thereafter, it was like, why didn't we do that?
And I think a lot of people thought that we would rebuild, that there would be a new train station there. It would be kind of the same. And I know when Paul Marangella came on as the city manager, that was one of the things he talked about. But he wanted the whole block redone.
Yeah.
So what were you saying, Pat? About Paul Marangella and the train station?
Oh, I think that when the train station was taken down, and it was very deteriorated, and I think a lot of people thought that we would just immediately have plans to build a new one. And when Paul Marangella came, that was one of the things that he had talked about doing in redevelopment, was in that block where the spot is, and then going to rebuilding a train station and having something similar to what we had before. But that never came to pass.
No, because the redevelopment, it went to a vote, the formation of a redevelopment agency, and the community said, no how, no way. And so with that vote, typically that train station rehab and redevelopment would have been handled under a redevelopment redevelopment funds, and so it didn't happen.
When was that it was voted down?
Redevelopment must have been in 1990, maybe? 1989, 90?
Well, Paul came in 1991.
Yeah, 91, somewhere right in there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. What else here? Do you remember the different law enforcement configurations we've had?
Well, the original 7, let's see, the first law enforcement we had was what was his name, Gary Brown, motorcycle, and that was the first one we had, and then
He patrolled on motorcycle?
Patrolled on motorcycle.
A 3-wheeled motorcycle.
Yeah. And then the original 7, when did they come? They came probably in about, because they were here when I started
They
in
were
73.
here when I was here too, I don't
So
know.
it was,
When you say the original 7, there were 7 people on staff?
yeah, John Furtado, Kevin Eliason,
Tom Hassenbein.
Tom Hassenbein, Zave Saragosa, Fred Markley.
So to begin with, there was just one person, and then later there were 7?
This-
Right, they hired, I wasn't there, but I'm always been under the assumption they hired one who then helped recruit
Right.
what would be the start of our police force.
And yeah,
It turned out it was 7 people.
7 people. And when I started in 1973, the police department was in the same building. We were in Colson's building. It was a metal building adjacent to where the garage is. And I think there were probably 7 officers then. And then they had a dispatcher. I think Zave Saragosa dispatched, and Tilly Donnelly was a receptionist, and I think she did some dispatching. So, and then
At the beginning, it was an interesting operation,
Yeah.
having everybody in that small area.
yeah.
At where Colson's is now?
I wasn't there. I planned it well in that I went to work for the city the first week they were in the new building. So Pat was the one that endured all that.
It was a metal building, and when I went to work, they didn't have a spot for me to sit. I just went in to help Gladys, and she did everything. She was the finance officer. She did purchasing, business licenses, payroll, personnel, and so I would help her, and everything was done by hand. We had to handwrite in ledger books, all the entries for disbursements and all the entries for revenue, and we did everything on typewriters. And so if I was working, one day I might be working on a table in the city manager's office. I might be in the police department. I might be in planning department, which was way in the back of the building. And if it was hot, somebody would stand on a chair and they would take out one of the acoustical tiles from the ceiling, and that was the air conditioning. So it was.
Where would the air come in from?
They just take out a couple of tiles, so you'd have more cool air up there, and that would cool the room down. So, but if it rained on that metal roof, it was just like a battlefield. It was so loud you couldn't hear yourself think in there. But it was very small quarters. But and that probably a staff, probably a total of 20. I think that would be about what we had in Public Works. I rarely saw anybody from Public Works because they had a different location. And that was one of the pluses of moving to the Standard Oil building, was that it could be administration, police, and Public Works all under one building.
When did you start again, Pat?
June of 1973.
So before that, it was in a couple of other locations.
They were down where Cabo's was. That was one place they were. They were across from.
The Coastal View?
Yeah. Then where they were in the building where was Kentucky Fried Chicken at one time.
Sunburst? Or
No, it was
Cielo, where Cielo is.
Cielo, which is Cabo's.
Yeah.
also,
Yeah. And
I don't
then,
know where else.
And wasn't it the Houston building down across from where the Coastal View is now?
Well, was the Justice Court in the front of the library building?
Yes.
Right.
Was that before 65 or after 65?
Before.
Okay, that was.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't be part of my time period. Let's see what else we want to go to. Do you recall the lights being installed in 68 or 69 at Carp Avenue in Linden?
I don't.
Don't remember. Okay.
Sorry. I'm sure it was a big deal like anything, but I don't know.
Do you recall any of the litigation to do with the beachfront properties, the Roberts litigation, or the Sandyland Cove litigation?
I know of it, but I was not involved directly in it. I know, I mean, I had to maintain boxes of files concerning it because it was a long, hard litigation about how to deal with it. We, in both planning and the city manager clerk's department, we had maps that showed the 30 feet all along from Linden to Ash, but I don't know all the ins and outs of the hows, the whys, all of that.
Do either of you have anything you'd like to say about Warrior football or sports here in town?
Well, always was a big fan.
I don't know. I went to school here, all the way through school here, and I just thought that it was, I understand, I guess, both sides. I tried to follow it a little. It was a big deal in Carpinteria. Obviously, how could you not be aware of it? I just personally didn't, I never felt that the school, they had eliminated so many, before that issue, they had eliminated so many of the depictions that might have been.
You're talking about the Warrior mascot issue, yeah.
Is that what you're talking
Well, I was
about?
starting off with just Warrior football.
Oh, well, I mean, Warrior football is huge.
It's always been a big thing in Carpinteria.
Yeah, I was in high school during a really peak period where we were just
You
winning.
always had your
and-
season tickets.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody did, but I have to say, a lot of that was when it was at the old Memorial Field, and it was right downtown, and it was what everybody did. I mean, I was a ranch farm kid, so, I mean, my parents, everybody brought us all. We all came in for the games. It was a biggie in Carpinteria. I'm not sure that it was just because it was football as much as it was a big event. We were a little town. We didn't have a lot of events, you know.
I remember that we always had big gatherings after the football game. And when they won CIF the year that Louis Panazon, what was that, 75? Louis Panazon was coach. And we had, Opie Morales and I had a big party here. And we had so many people, but it was just a big celebration. And I had this big cake, and I always thought, what would I have done if they hadn't won? But it was just a big event for everybody to.
It was a huge tradition for years. I mean,
Yeah.
it really was. I know that it's sort of going through a little bit of a change, I think.
I think that starts at a lower level. You know, there aren't the. Now they're building up. Last year, I know they didn't have a very successful program, but this year Boys Club is starting young, but there's so much concern about concussions and health issues and.
Did either of you get a piece of the goalpost from the 75 game? I
No,
it was
I
broken.
didn't.
Lou
I mean-
Panazon showed me his piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was a Warrior and graduated there and all, but I wasn't involved in that.
Do either of you want to weigh in on the Warrior mascot controversy?
Well, I had just started to say that I personally, I don't have any, I didn't really take a position other than we had been the Warrior for a long time. I knew other cities that had Native American mascots. I thought Carpinteria had gotten rid of so many of the what might have been perceived as the negative images, and what was left was so small, and there was such a big hubbub over it. I found myself concerned at the amount of people from out of town that came and told us what we should do. I was concerned a little bit about how our board handled it. I went to a couple hearings. express an opinion. I was there to be informed. But some of the speakers from San Francisco and up north who were very obviously trained people, I was a little concerned about that. I wanted to see our community make a decision about it, one way or the other. I was familiar with another community that also coincidentally were the Warriors, and the same kind of thing had happened, and their school board just took an absolute stand. I mean, they just said, I'm sorry, we're not interested. We've been the Warriors since the school was started. We do not believe we have any negative, what do you call it, depictions. And we plan to stay the Warriors, thank you very much. And that was it. I mean, this community was embroiled in it for months, and it was like, I don't know, how did they come to just pick us, you know?
Well, it was one.
And whatever's
one
meant to
person.
be, like I said, if we had to be something else, I guess we'd all get used to it. But it just seemed like a lot of effort and energy on something that I wasn't sure was necessary.
Well, and I don't think the Warrior was never a negative thing.
It was a strong.
It was a strong thing. And you look at, with the Westmont has a Warrior team, the Washington Redskins. There are so many other schools that and different teams that have that.
It was just unfortunate that somehow I realized it was a student who felt disenfranchised from it, and I don't wish any ill will on that. It was almost like we were targeted. Little Carpinteria, I don't know, to go that many years and never have anybody raise any issues, and then suddenly we were embroiled in.
Well, that's a sign of the times, you know.
But it is
being
what it is.
Politically correct. And
How about any other controversial or big issues in the area in the last 50 years? Does anything else come to mind other than what we've discussed?
Well, I think we hit on I mean, for us, for Pat and I, the 1990 election was a big turning point for almost all the employees that were there at the time.
How so?
It was a massive change in philosophy for the city. I'm not saying it was bad, it was just a change. We went from the old school.
that was the
Always,
year that
they
Alan
were,
Post resigned. And
yeah, I mean,
How did you describe old school?
well, I mean, the council members we had were all homegrown locals that we all knew. We knew before they were council members, we knew them during. Everything just kind of went along. I'm not making judgments about whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. It's just the way it was. Maybe they would, I don't know if that's what the term good old boys is used for, but it was. And then in 1990, along came a challenge by three people that not one of us at City Hall, nor anyone we knew, which wasn't bad. It was just, it was like, okay. And it was a huge election in the sense that out went the historic thinking, what would you say, the philosophy of a certain group of people, and in came a new group.
How would you describe the new philosophy?
They're great people. I mean, I think we all, at first, I think we were really concerned because No, I was the only one that knew them because I worked the election with them. I mean, when I work with candidates, I work on a daily basis practically. So I had all the other employees coming saying, who are these people? What are they like? Are they nice? Are they, I mean, everybody was quite concerned because this was a new era. And of course, they had a huge following and won. And then it was like, okay, where do we go from here? And it turned out, at least in my opinion, to be all good things. But it took us a while because they wanted, obviously, to have their own city manager. They did not want Alan, and Alan wanted to bow out anyway, Alan Coates. I mean, by then he saw the writing on the wall because each council, typically in any community, the council has to have a rapport with their own manager. And so we knew we would be getting someone new. Alan stayed and finished out, and then they brought in a temp for a little while. And that's when they hired Paul Marangella, who brought tremendous change in terms of the inside of City Hall, all of us. And we kind of all struggled along at first because this was a new way of thinking. I mean, good grief, we were told that we were going to have a computer on every desk. I mean, who had ever heard of that? You know, I mean, it was just so many big changes. And the council had an absolute directive for him. I mean, they knew what they wanted, and that was, you know, we want the downtown improvements finished. We want to have computers at City Hall. What were some of the, I can't even.
Broadcast the city meeting.
We want open government. We want transparency. I mean, which are all very good things, but it all came quickly, and it wasn't always easy to a group of employees, a lot of which of us had been there quite a while, but he moved us all out of the box. He really was amazing. But it all had to do with the council having a picture of what they wanted for the city. And they had a different growth philosophy. They had a different...
How would you describe how is the growth philosophy different? More slow growth?
Very cautious, very careful. I think some people thought it was going to be no growth, but I didn't get that feeling. I think it was just, let's look at each and every project that comes along carefully, be sure that it's right for our community. We want to preserve the quaintness. We want to preserve this little beach town. It was wonderful. I mean, in terms of where we were headed. But it was really huge for all of us because it was the difference between Alan Coates' administration and Paul Marangella was night and day, wasn't it?
What was Alan Coates like?
You take it. I've
Well,
talked enough.
Alan did a lot of things himself. He did not delegate, and I think that was one of the biggest things, the biggest changes that we had when Paul came. I remember going into his office one day, and he gave me the new city council was very interested in what the state legislation was doing, and so we would get information from the League of California Cities, and then Paul would have me look at issues that had a special interest in, and then I would have to write a memo, pro and con, and then make a recommendation that they could either write a letter to the state about it or not. And so I went in there one day, and he was going through some things he wanted me to do, and he said it would require writing resolutions. And I said, oh, I don't do resolutions. And he said, well, you do now. And that was a big change for me, that I had to do staff reports and resolutions. Mr. Coates always did his own staff reports, and he always wrote his own resolutions. And so staff had kind of just drifted along like that. But two of the things that Paul did that were really major and had a big impact on what I did, one was joining the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, which we moved all of our insurance, auto, personal, bonds, property, everything. We had to inventory everything, and then we went through the JPIA. And then through them, we got a lot of special training for employees and safety issues. And the other thing he did was which was not really received very well at first. He had a consultant come in and work with what was the Parking and Business Improvement Area Advisory Board, which is the downtown T. And the consultant worked with that board and the chamber. And we were setting goals and objectives for what we wanted to do with the money that was collected through the PBIA. And so we set, the goal was to maybe not spend money trying to get someone to come to Carpinteria from New Jersey or wherever, but sell the issues to the people that lived here, have them invite their families and friends, do things that would be of interest to them. So we had concerts at the park, we started working on the parades, we had a Christmas parade, and a big issue was in must have been in sometime in the 90s, mid-90s, that we started the Hospice Light Up a Life program with our Christmas holiday programs, and that was very well received. We had that at Hollyhock Cottage, which had that beautiful tree to decorate, and that was held on that same site until 2010, I guess, and then they have it at the Fountain now. And one of the most ambitious projects of that committee was that we installed the first downtown public restroom. Donna Lemere was in charge of that committee, and we started out, we knew nothing about restrooms, so we had to work with the water district, we had to work with the gas company, we had to work with electricity, and then there was a water level of whether or not we could put something in the parking lot, and so it was very involved. And we installed the first restroom on 9th Street, and then later there was one that was also installed down at the train depot. But Paul delegated a lot and expected a lot of his staff, and I think at first everybody they didn't like it very well, but I think as you look back on it, I think it was great for staff. It really brought us into a new century practically of doing things, and we computerized payroll, computerized
everything.
all the records. It just made life easier, really. So that was a big change for us, though.
Any other big changes?
With Paul?
Well,
No, I think we got through, many of us, even though we grumbled at some of the initial things, we made it through, and we all benefited. I personally, although Paul was at times challenging because he was so high energy and pinning him down to some for the everyday things sometimes was hard, but I mean, like I will owe him forever, because he was the one that came to me and said, you're the deputy city clerk, you do all the work, and I have the title of city clerk. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. If you go to city clerk school and get your certification, I'll fight it at the council level to have them make you city clerk. Because he said, I really don't want to be city clerk. I'm too busy being city manager. And he followed through. I went to city clerk school and did it. And I mean, I don't know of any other city manager that would have done that in quite that manner.
He really wanted the most out of employees.
He wanted you to grow, and he move out of the box and try new things. And it was amazing because his energy level was just huge.
Where did he come from?
Mammoth.
Oh.
And then the only other thing that came to my mind while we were talking was after he left, and we had an interim, or I can't recall the exact timing, but then when Samantha Orguno came, our first woman city manager, the one thing that comes to mind that was really a big deal during her administration, along with certainly the police department changeover, was the visioning, the community visioning. That was something we had never done anything like that. To take it on was a huge endeavor.
What was that?
That was gathering representatives from the entire community, several hundred, and having a consultant come in and lead the community through a visioning process as to what they wanted for the future of Carpinteria. How did they see it? How did they want to feel it? How did it look? It was a huge endeavor. I mean, most of us as employees just assisted. We were there to help, but the community really participated. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it was a very good bonding thing for the community, because it was quite a binder when it was all finished. But I think it was something that we referred back to even
because Samantha
later
had the
years.
ability to gather opposite sides of the
She could put
spectrum.
people together.
And they bought in to participate. And some of them literally sitting at the same table. People who were, whatever you want to call, growthers, no growthers, pro this, pro that, anti this, we used the auditorium at the what is currently now the middle school. And we had a full room. We had tables and all these several hundred people, and to come up with a vision for Carpinteria. It's a published booklet that is still used at the City Hall. Many times they've gone back and looked at it on different projects or different ideas. Was this something that the community liked at the time? Granted, it's old now, but the principles, a lot of them are the same. And I give her credit for pulling that off. It was not easy.
When was that?
That was about 90.
Well, it was in the late 90s.
Late 90s, yeah. And it was that was just one thing that stands out as an event, plus something that
was
she
really very
did.
successful, to get that many people from the community and staff
And it
working
covered,
together like that.
all elements. It talked about future roadways. It talked about recreation. It talked about, there were all these categories, and in every one they came up with what were the priorities for the community. And it wasn't the council, it was the community. And getting people to sit down and do that was...
It was interesting, the connection between people that you wouldn't think would ever be working together on a committee.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun. It was fun though, really, a lot of work.
But
Can you give any examples of who work together that you wouldn't have imagined?
I don't think
No.
so.
You don't want to go there. Okay, this just fell down.
I don't think we'll name names,
Okay,
Larry.
And one thing some people have said that came out of it was the Bluffs effort. Well, when Dorothy Campbell got up and said, why don't we try to buy the Bluffs?
Well, that's possible. I
Yeah.
don't recall
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
specifics, but the Bluffs thing was pretty clear about where. I mean, I was in the planning department when the different developments came in for it. You know,
The
one
bluff, that
was-
started early on in the
different
70s,
developments. You know,
yeah.
Chevron would come in with or Southern. Well, actually, it was Chevron in most cases came in with condominiums and different proposals, and it was, you know, nothing ever really happened. And I think that there were a lot of people spurred by the 1990 election that's where it all started. The thought that, golly, maybe we can figure out a way. I think it wasn't happening at the city level so much as the community level, because it was really community based to do that purchase. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
You know, one other thing that I think had a big impact on the city was when the Lifeguard Association became affiliated with the city, and the city took over the hiring of lifeguards for the beach. And then when the pool was completed, that was a really big plus for the community. And then the city had a lot of new programs that we could have. You know, we had the after-school, the aqua program, and we have all kinds of different beach programs. And now that's just grown into a really tremendous effort from not only Matt does a great job, Matt Roberts is in charge of that, but he's branched out into the parks, so it's Parks and Recreation. And that made a big difference in the city, I think, when what we had to offer, not only from the standpoint for employing people, but what we had to offer the community.
Good point. Any other issues or happenings come to mind in the last 50 years?
Oh gosh, Larry, there's,
Name a few.
well, one of the things that it sounds so silly that we dealt with was when the city changed its refuse franchise.
Oh, right.
That was huge.
Why?
The community was so mad at us and upset. It was just unbelievable. I mean, all good things came from it, all good things. And I think the community would agree. Harrison has just been great to our community. But Marburg, all those years, channel disposal, it was called at the time, they came and got your trash can out of your yard and wheeled it down and dumped it. And when we told the community that they were going to roll their trash cans to the curb, oh my gosh.
And not only that, you had three.
You were going to have
recycle, a yard,
3
and
containers.
garbage.
And it was like,
What did it go from what two to what three?
it went from 1
One.
to
One.
3.
Just 1 to 3.
Because Harrison was on the leading edge of recycling, whereas channel disposal hadn't even moved in that direction. I mean, Marburg, which is
course, now they do.
is subsequently is Marburg, but people were furious. We had to take 3 or 4 employees just to man the phones from people saying, "What are you people doing down there?" And we kept saying, "But don't you want to pay lower rates? I mean, it's going to be less expensive. We're going to enter the realm of recycling, which is very important." All of these things. It took like a good month to get things under control. People really were, it was funny. I mean, now I look back and I laugh, but I mean, it was
And-
they didn't care. They didn't care that their bill was going to be less. That guy wasn't going to come and get the trash out of their yard. I mean, they don't, because at my own house, they open the gate, wheel it out, do it, put it back, and all. Well, you're paying labor for that.
Well, when did that change?
That was during Samantha's,
Yeah.
that
So
would
there
have
was-
been
And
in,
in the late 90s, yeah.
yeah.
Late 90s?
Late 90s. But it was, I mean, that's just a funny point. It
I'm
was,
glad you brought that up. That was a good one.
it was
yeah, and
just,
remembering
we had
whether-
no idea the community would be so upset. Absolutely. We knew from some public hearings that there were some people that were really, they were into channel disposal. That was their baby, and they were perfectly happy. And I think we knew that there would be a few disgruntled people, but oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. And then all of a sudden people bought in, and I think everybody loves Harrison now. I mean, Harrison's a good partner in this community, but oh my goodness.
It was quite an adjustment. And people would call because if you were to put out your brown waste, yard waste, and you put out your blue recycle, they didn't pick the blue recycle up if it was brown day. And they would call and they would be very upset because they didn't pick up my bin.
Yeah, see, people had to get used
You
to
had
the
to
new
put
system.
out the right color or it didn't get
And
picked up. So.
I just remember, because I was obviously in the clerk's office and we got a lot of the calls, and people were really disgruntled.
On a different subject, anything to do with the state park? I know there'd been some tension between the city and state park over the years, or nothing comes to mind about that.
No, I mean, it's had its moments. Certainly when I was there, depending on who at any given time was in charge of the park, sometimes they were easier to work with, and sometimes not. Most of it was at the state level. I think they wanted to do the one thing that the city had always wanted to do was the camper tax, and we early on they pursued that, and there is no provision for that. It's not allowed, so they promptly, it's resurfaced innumerable times.
How about parades? I know there was the Loyalty Day parade and then the Independence Day. Can you describe any of the parades of the past and present?
Well, I think when I started there, before Paul came, I really didn't have anything to do with the parades, but then when he got there and he kind of started the PBI up, got us more involved. The parades had been done by the chamber. They had a retail committee, and the retail committee, well then the city would give them money for that, and then they no longer had the retail committee. The city was still giving them the money, and so Paul said, well, we're not going to give them the money anymore. We're going to put it over here with the PBIA. PBIA, you will now do the parades. So we did the two parades, the 4th of July parade and the Independence Day parade and the Christmas parade.
And what does PBIAA stand for?
Parking and Business Improvement Area Advisory Board, and it's for the downtown T.
And who funds that?
Well, the funding
They
is
do.
through the merchants. They pay into a, I don't know what it is now, it was around probably $100 maybe a month. And then the assessment fee is for parking for every business in the T, based on what your business is. And like, for example, a restaurant pays a higher fee than a retail that has a smaller footage of the building. So
Do you recall what the Loyalty Day parade was like?
the
Remember?
Loyalty Day parade.
Remember when we did the bell?
Oh, that was when that
The
was in
Freedom Bell.
The very let's see, and I think that was we had a Freedom Bell that the
We
city
did. The employees had a
Freedom Bell,
float.
Yeah.
We did a float. We had to build it and all, and somebody
And that
came
was
up.
probably one of the
with a
last
bell.
years of the Loyalty Day Parade.
That was when,
Yeah.
I don't even know much about how those started or anything, but I remember that. We worked on that, oh my God. And then
Yeah.
we got all our kids the city wanted more people, so we got our kids to carry the banners and all, but it was this giant Liberty Bell, and Randy pulled it with
Yeah.
his Jeep. The assistant planner pulled it with his Jeep. It was,
I was trying to think who
It was
did
hilarious.
I think the Loyalty Day parades were actually probably done through the chamber.
And then, has there always been the Independence Day Parade and the Holiday Parade?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember the bed races? I think there
I
were
don't.
bed races.
Oh,
on
they
that.
had bid races, yeah, a couple of times. That was,
I
what
don't
was that?
recall
But
that.
I don't know who sponsored those though.
Was it
but-
on Ash Avenue? Or was it on Linden?
No, it was, I think it was on Linden.
Okay. There was some canoe races too.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
canoe races, but I don't remember who
Yeah, I don't know
sponsored
who
them.
sponsored those.
How about downtown improvements? So you've talked about it some. Were there certain pushes to have downtown improvements?
Oh, yes.
When
Yeah,
were
there
those
definitely, yeah.
Well, they had started doing a few things during Alan Coates' administration, towards the end of his administration. There had been a big, how can I say this? There'd always been a strong feeling that we needed, by both perhaps the old council and the new council, as I referred to in 1990, the old council, the new council. There had always been a strong feeling that we had to find some ways to tap in to this 1 million+ visitors at the park. That was one of the facets of thinking, was how do we get them to get up there? I mean, the best we could seemingly do was get them occasionally to walk up to Safeway, Vons, and buy a few things and go. We needed to find a way to make the downtown more attractive. And when Paul came, Paul Marangella, that was at least our understanding, that was one of the directives of the new council, was we're going to finish those downtown improvements. We're going to do all the spruce ups, the pergolas, the beach, the seats, the new trees, we're going to spruce up what the city has control of in the downtown, and hopefully the store merchants would follow suit and perk up and begin to have or consider outdoor eating, little, what you see now and all. And basically he did. Mm-hmm. He put a tremendous emphasis on getting that downtown done. That was when we put up the really cute bagel lights. We did
Of course, Seal Fountain was part of that.
the seal fountain. We negotiated with the Brown family for that area. Then in the meantime, Carp Beautiful came in, and some of the money they earned from the home tour, they did all the tiling down there. We got the seal statue. It all started coming together, and it worked. I mean, by most people's estimation, it did work. And then in recent years, various agencies completed Tomo Park, which certainly, before that, the city negotiated the arrangement with the state park to maintain Linden Field so that it would be nicer. And then we don't own it, but we maintain it. And then Tomo Park came along. Then with Tomo Park came a walkway that connects to the state park. So instead of just people wandering, trying to figure out how do you get to the downtown, there's a walkway from the state park. So there were lots of effort made. The sidewalks, during Paul's administration, he completed the sidewalk from the railroad tracks to the beach on the east side. Then along came benches, and you know, all these pieces came together to.
Your mic's kind of flopping around just a little.
I'm sorry.
No problem, I'm just gonna put it right there.
So all these pieces came.
This just came together to really make for a very attractive downtown.
One of the things that the PBIA board did,
And PBIA did a
they
lot.
installed a big wooden structure where they had a map of the downtown, and then they had around the sides, they had pictures that would show all the various different businesses. Roxanne Barbieri designed a brochure of the downtown tea, and with a little very cute little brochure that we had. Merchants could hand it out. We also took some of those down to the state park for the entry.
Were you talking about the tourist kiosk was put in?
Right.
There
no,
was one put at the state
at
park.
the state park,
Oh.
right inside. They just said they went in. It was just to the left of their turnstile there. Another thing they did is we had maps made out, the kind of a caricatured map, and we handed those out at State Park. We also gave them to restaurants. They could use them as a table mat, or they could just hand them out. And we kept them supplied with those things, and they started taking, like Coastal View would take Coastal View papers down, things that would draw the people into town and let them know what was going on. So I think that helped too, and the access getting into town, I think, was a really big thing, that people knew where to go. And
What do you mean?
Well, getting them so they knew how to get to Linden Avenue in a more formalized way. I mean, it used to be that they just maybe happened to go across Linden Field and end up on, but we were never in the early years able to particularly draw them into the downtown. But then it's not just what the city did either. It's what happened community-wise. These PBIA's events, people started going, oh, this is like the cutest little quaint parade I've ever seen. Let's be sure to be in Carpinteria at the campground on that date. Then, of course, the Avocado Festival came. Well, I mean, that brought so many people, and those people come back over and over and over.
and the car show.
The car show. I mean, everybody started these events that people, they were in the downtown. Even the simple things like the farmers market. The farmers market started drawing people. It was right on Linden. Now I would guess it's a rarity for someone to camp down there and not walk into town at some point. Not just to go to the market, to perhaps go out to dinner, because we've gained so many restaurants, and it makes for a more vibrant economy and a downtown.
Do you have any thoughts of what businesses started up to make things more vibrant? Was it Zucker's or?
Those kind of places. Zucker's. Zucker's was certainly, well, the Palms brings people from
yeah.
all over the place. We always, us old timers, always laugh at that, because, I mean, we think the Palms is fine, but we think it is so amusing that people think it is absolutely wonderful to go to a place and cook your own steak. I mean, most of us, we think of going and they do it, and I know people, you can even meet them in there, people that come from, oh, we've heard about the Palms, we've always wanted to come, this is just the greatest thing. So you had that little start, and you had Tony's, and you had a few of the older, steady, good places, and then they started, Zucker's came along, And then Gianfranco's came along, and then Sly's came along, and Cork Tree. You start adding those kinds of restaurants and you draw people. I mean, it's got to be challenging for them during the winter months, I would guess. But they've built clientele, I think, that are sustaining them. And the community is sustaining them.
And now Rincon Brewery and
Rincon Brewery, I have not been there yet, but it's always so crowded. But Cielo's got a new look, and there's that.
Well, Island Breweries, of course, right on the railroad tracks. That's right across.
They
from
get
the
a lot
state
of the park
They get a
people.
lot of park people there.
But and then you have the old favorites, you know, the Spot, and then there's that new pizza place. I mean, all of those, we tried for years to get a variety of restaurants, and it was very hard. It's not easy to start a restaurant in a little town. And suddenly, we have some choices for the first time, and it's wonderful.
But on the other side of it, we used to have a lot of cute little, like we had a couple of really
Yeah.
cute little dress shops, and Bobby Bastin, where they had baby clothes in there, and we're
Those went
missing
away.
that part. But we have a lot of other, stores that you can usually get almost anything you want in Carpinteria.
The biggest probably hole in the whole thing is children's clothing in general, because we have a couple wonderful shops. Island Outfitters is a favorite of mine.
Carpinteria Cotton has really nice
Carpinteria
things.
Cotton, but they're not for everybody.
I just thought another issue, was it Costco that wanted to come to town a while ago? And tell me about that.
During Paul Marangello's
Yeah,
administration,
yeah.
Costco came knocking at the door, and
I don't think any big box store is ever going to.
And the community, I mean, just to sum it up, I mean, Paul saw dollar signs like crazy, I think, from the sales tax revenue, but the community said, no way, no, don't even go there. We're not doing big boxes, Costco or not. It was pretty cut and dry.
Well, when was that Costco wanted to come?
And then
Oh,
it would
that
have
would
been
have
like
been-
92 or 93.
Yeah, right after fall came.
Okay, we just about covered everything, and I'm just running out of tape, my second hour of tape.
Oh, geez.
This has been the longest interview yet, I've done.
I'm embarrassed that we're taking your time, but
The
yeah.
oil spill, do you want to say anything more about the oil spill? Did it affect
No.
us in town much?
Yeah, it affected Carpinteria. We had a
What was
huge
that?
settlement from it. I mean, that money, they still have some of it today, the oil spill.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, with the city got, I don't know exactly how much, but it was a huge amount because of our beaches. It was horrible. I don't know the detail of it all because it was before me, but to my knowledge, there is still money in the,
Yeah, I just remember goo.
yeah,
Are you aware of when Nixon stayed on Sandyland Lane?
no.
And Reagan came during one of the floods? Do you
I don't
Right,
remember that.
yeah, I remember, well, let's see, I remember when Clinton was here.
Tell me about that.
Well, Clinton, because it's 93013 zip code, but, and they always said he was at Summerland instead of saying he was at Carpinteria. But on PBIA, we had a sign made, and we did all these things thinking we would be welcoming. At least he would come to Carpinteria, but he didn't. He did go to the Nugget, though, and he stayed
on
He
Padaro
stayed out on
Padaro
Padaro.
Lane.
Which is a Carpinteria address.
Yeah.
Right, and he
that
went
was an address.
to,
So we said, well, he was in Carpinteria.
and
but
we
he didn't
just
actually come
heard
here.
like everybody else that he had gone to the Nugget and he had played
Played his saxophone.
his
yeah.
saxophone.
They have a picture up there still.
Let me pause this. Oh,
That was
Councilman, what was his last name?
Kilborn.
Kilborn.
What do you
Kate.
recall about him? I saw some articles that he was a thorn in the council. He was a big.
Yes,
what
he
the
was a
deal?
thorn in our side.
Well, he was there before I was at the city.
And
He was the only council member that's ever been recalled
right.
I
So
mean-
why was he?
because he was really difficult, from what I understand.
He kept things from happening, you know. I mean, he just was so abusive, for one thing. And that I think was in about 73, 74. That was
He
just
was
when
really
We were-
difficult and ornery, and not just behind the scenes, at the meetings. He
Yeah.
was apparently disruptive. He was the one that caused them to impose a no smoking during the meetings at the council
'Cause he would smoke a
chambers.
cigar.
He smoked cigars, and after they passed it, he went in. Apparently, the story has it that he went to a meeting and had a cigar, and Ernie and he got into it, and Ernie whipped the cigar out of his mouth and stuck it in the water glass, which doesn't sound impossible to me.
Yeah.
I
I know
knew them only because I dealt with them after he was recalled occasionally. He would come in